the angels released the winds. See, we're dealing with biblical types here of things that are going to happen in the future. What happened literally to Israel locally is going to happen on a global scale at the end of time. Notice verse 3. Now the end has come upon you, and I will send my anger against you. I will judge you according to your ways. I will repay you for all your what? Abominations. Don't forget that word. My eye will not spare you, nor will I have pity, but I will repay your ways, and your abominations will be seen in your midst. Then you shall know that I am the Lord. And do you know what the greatest abomination was that was being committed immediately before the city was destroyed? Notice Ezekiel chapter 8 and verse 16. Ezekiel chapter 8, and let's begin our reading at verse 15 for the context. Notice the greatest abomination. Ezekiel chapter 8 is called the chapter of the abominations. And the reason why is because God shows Ezekiel an abomination, and Ezekiel says, wow, Lord, that's pretty bad. God says, you haven't seen anything yet. I want to show you an abomination that's worse than this one. And so God shows him a worse abomination. And Ezekiel says, Lord, this is terrible. God says, you haven't seen anything yet. I'm going to show you one that's worse. And what do we find as the worst abomination of all? Notice Ezekiel 8, verse 16. Then he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man? Turn again, you will see greater abominations than these. So he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house. And there, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs toward the temple of the Lord and their faces toward the east. And they were worshiping the sun towards the east. What was the greatest abomination that was being committed among those who professed to be God's people? They were worshiping what? They were worshiping the sun. Does that have any end-time significance? It most certainly does. We're going to study that later on. Verse 17. And he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man? Is it a trivial thing to the house of Judah to commit the abominations? Notice the word again. The abominations which they commit here. For they have filled the land with violence. Then they have returned to provoke me to anger. Indeed, they put the branch to the nose. In other words, they snubbed their nose at the Lord. Therefore, I also will act in fury. My eye will not spare, nor will I have pity. Though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, I will not hear them. God is saying this about His beloved bride who has become a harlot and has adopted the abominations of the nations and is proud of all of her wonderful jewels and fornicates with the kings of the earth. This is not some pagan nation. God is rebuking His bride, His wife. Now let me ask you, were there faithful people in Jerusalem? Was everybody apostate? Was everybody a harlot? Absolutely not. Before the destruction of the city, did God say that He was going to do a work of separating the righteous from the unrighteous? A judgment? Absolutely. Ezekiel chapter 9. Ezekiel chapter 9 and verse 1. Then He called out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, let those who have charge over the city draw near, each with a deadly weapon in his hand. In other words, these messengers are coming to execute God's judgment. And suddenly 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north.